Hello, this is the Blue Wizard with Soul Arrow number 6. Today I'm going to do a little recap. I believe that magic is engaging with the consciousness purposefully. The same way a martial artist might control their heart rate in order to get the most out of their muscle groups, to gain the most out of their strength, gaining so much control over their body that they have the ability to stop their heart, to breathe perfectly in rhythm with their movements. A martial artist's chief concern is gaining control over the physical self. A spiritual person, a magical person, extends that control past the physical self and into the conscious self, the awareness. Your mind is always consuming the outside world, always taking it in. But it creates different emotions. Anger, sadness, happiness. Sometimes you don't even know why the things you take in make you feel the way that they do. But you know that certain things elicit certain feelings. This is a little bit like eating food. Some food makes you sick. Some food makes you feel healthy. Some food makes you feel healthy when you eat it, but ends up making you feel sick ultimately. Some food tastes great. Some doesn't. Some food you could always return to. Some food you have to be in the mood for. Understand that in a similar vein, every idea that you come across, every encounter that you're conscious of in the outside world is something that you either want to go towards or away from. Imagine someone made you upset, or someone did something that you'd normally find upsetting, and you got to choose, instead of becoming upset, to instead be curious about them. Imagine that. Imagine being able, instead of drawing the line between you and someone who opposes you, to see yourself in the equilibrium that that person is in. Magic is about adjusting awareness in just such a way. Imagine that you're trying to get somebody to love you, or just trying to get somebody to notice you. Imagine that you're filled with fear. You're scared that you're not good enough. Now imagine that you can melt that feeling away in an instant and choose to feel worthy of the person that you're trying to interact with. How much better of a chance do you think that you have if you can be who you want to be inside? I think it stands to reason that you have a much better chance if you control your perception in such a way that you feel confident. We've defined magic, perception with purpose. That's what we're defining magic as. Perception on purpose, or POP for short, is how I explain magic to people. Perception on purpose. That you're engaging with this subconscious act in a conscious way. Your body, it breathes on its own. But if you want to breathe perfectly for every situation, you have to learn how to breathe. Your mind, it thinks on its own, but if you want to think correctly in every situation, you have to know how to think. You're aware and conscious on your own too. Other people you send message to, consciously or subconsciously, you send little messages all the time. Every little facial expression, every little integer of your voice sends a message. Gaining conscious control over this can give you an unprecedented control over your reality. and that's the nature of magic. This video is coming in 2 parts. This introductory part is just me going over what we've already covered. I'm in a deep, meditative state while we're talking. I haven't revisited my spirituality for quite some time, so I thought it was necessary. The reality is that I've been very hurt lately. One thing after another. I lost very close friends that were holding me up. And then my brother died. And then my father died. And I haven't allowed myself to be as angry and as sad and as messed up about those things as I actually am. And since spirituality is the pursuit of truth, you can't pursue truth when you're lying to yourself. You can't be a truth seeker and be lying. If you're telling everybody, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, and you're not fine, then you are cutting yourself off from a genuine awareness, a genuine connection. It's all right to be fucked up. It's all right to have the pain of life give you backward views about things. It's all right to be mistaken in your judgments. If there was one overarching point that I make with my art, with my videos, it's this. Greatness is not denied to you just because you are a flawed human being. Every hero that has ever been, ever, is a flawed human being. You know, Tesla was a poor businessman. Edison was a good businessman, but a poor person. Both were geniuses, both revolutionized the world, both are heroes. Alexander the Great dreamed of a world that had no war and no separation between the races. But he thought that the only way to achieve that was to fight every single people different from him, conquer them, and then interbreed to make one race. Great thinking. Bad conclusions on Alexander the Great's part, I should say. You can go at things with great intentions, best of intentions, accomplish many great things, and still, at the end of the day, be a flawed, small, mortal human being. That's the reality of how we all live. I'm speaking right now with my genuine voice. This is the way that I sound in my head. I'm not consciously right now aware of the time that it's taking for me to say what I'm saying. I'm not thinking. There's no thought. There's only flow. Genuine flow. Usually before a soul arrow, I take a few deep breaths. Today, I meditated for 45 minutes. I let the waves of my own dreamscape wash over me. I flowed down the river in my mind. The river that outstretches like a great ocean. I looked up at the trees. I looked up and saw the sun shining through them. As the sky fish with their many eyes flew around. I washed upon the shores of Ilium, where my true self lies. And I felt free. And free is a joyful, dreadful feeling. It is lonely and expansive. It is exhilarating and crushing. When you can do anything, what will you do? We were supposed to discuss the nature of magical names. There are many different ways of getting magical names. I read a few articles on the subject yesterday in preparation for this video. The first article said that one should just pick some magical concept and name oneself after that. I think that this is misunderstanding what a magical name is. A magical name is not a name that is magic. A magical name is the name of a magical person. The name of one's own internal concept. Basically, the premise of your very being. So, the goddess Hecate is a magical deity. The god Odin is a magical deity. There's people, I guess, that call themselves Odin or call themselves Hecate because it's a magical concept, but such a thing would be disrespectful to the gods. Any pagan would tell you that naming yourself after a deity is a bad idea. It's one thing to have a name inspired by a deity that pays homage to them. It's another thing entirely to call yourself by the name of a deity. So, just calling yourself that's not going to help you. You know, if you say, I am a Hippolyta, no, you're not Hippolyta. You're a human. You have to be what you are. So if that doesn't work, what else can we do? Another site suggested that you pick some great natural phenomenon and then an animal. Eclipse wolf, moon bear, sunfly. Certainly this creates more pleasant sounding hippie names, less disrespectful of our embodiments of the cosmos. Certainly this could tell you something about the disposition of the person. And still, I would say that this is not a magical name. It's closer. It's closer. And I'm not saying that these other names are bad. This isn't about good or bad. This is about truth. A name describes a thing. Describe. Scribe. That means to write down, to label. Basically, when you scribe something, you spell it out. You break down its components, the ideas that make it up. So when you're trying to find a magical name, what you have to remember is that you're looking for you, your core conception, the idea that you are. What separates your identity from the rest of the universe? What makes you you? The best method that I've read of for finding a magical name is in a kid's book. A book by the name of The Book of Wizardry by Cornelius Rumstuckle. Rumstuckle? Yeah. So, one of my first forays into magic was the Book of Wizardry. I didn't acquire it as a kid. I acquired it as an adult. But some of the ideas found within hold some legitimate value. So, the Book of Wizardry by Cornelius Rumstuckle. But I'll share my journey with finding my magical name here. And it's not really, the path won't divert from what was outlined in the book. There's only really one way to find your magical name, though the form you ultimately forge it into is a different thing entirely. There is one alternative way of finding a magical name, as described by the Kabbalah, but I didn't find that method to be preferable either. Like, it didn't create a magical name that I felt like is the totality. So, but I may revisit that concept later. That's not me damning it. It's just saying that it's one of the things I read about. But it wasn't this method that I've used, and this method that I've used has given me great results. So, this is going to sound, first of all, we're going to break this into like a couple of parts. Part number 1, meditation. All right. You're going to need to be able to meditate for this first part to work. So, here is how you meditate. All right. Now, there are a bajillion different methods. I'm going to tell you mine. All right. This is by no means definitive. So, in a quiet place, dimly lit, what you want to do, or really any place where you won't be disturbed, right? But I prefer my place quiet and dimly lit. You're going to want to sit. You don't have to have your legs crossed. You can if you want to. Sit in a position that's comfortable with your back erect. If you can't sit, you can meditate laying down or standing up or whatever, okay? The position doesn't matter. The ability to stay still in the position matters. Your back being straight matters. So, with your back straight and your position set, you want to begin taking deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. Count 1, 2, 3. Hold. Out. 1, 2, 3. In. 1, 2, 3. Hold. 1, 2, 3. Out. 1, 2, 3. Just like that. Okay? That's how you want to breathe. You feel each part of your body, from your legs to your torso, to your hands, to your shoulders, to your neck, to your face, getting heavier. You get heavier and heavier in your body, more and more relaxed. And your eyes will eventually close as the eyelids get heavy. And as you breathe, it gets slower and slower. 5. 5 is how long you hold the breath now. Breathe in 5. Hold 5. Release 5. You'll breathe slower and slower as you go. That's good. Nice, deep, long breaths, not forced, natural. If you're forcing it, if it feels hard to breathe, you've gone too far. Heavy, controlled, natural. Okay? As your body gets heavier, your chest gets lighter. Okay. And by that I mean your lungs, your heart. Any place that you feel any stress on your body is released, it dissipates. Just warm and effortless. Once you've reached that state on the outside, then it's time for the inside. The goal with meditation on the inside is to simply observe. You're listening to your own internal workings. You ask a question, you wait for a response. It's a dialogue between you and your innermost self. The ego, the id, the superego. You're listening. Superego is your consciousness, so you're listening for responses from the other two. The id, which is an animal constantly collecting thoughts and feelings, trying to figure out how to use them to survive. The ego constantly figuring out the way that you should be, the way that you should not be, who you are, who you aren't. You're listening to that aspect of yourself. Just listening. Every now and then you'll think something. But who's thinking that thing? You have to keep an observation. You can allow your mind to think, but you're just watching that thought. You're not the thought. You're not thinking anything. Your mind is thinking. You are watching. So you watch. You watch your mind think. You watch as your nose itches or your foot itches. You watch as sounds happen outside of your house. You listen to the leaves blow. All those different distractions. You watch your mind go all over the place, but you are steady. You are just watching all of it. You're not getting caught up in any of it because you're watching. So now, once we've gotten pretty good at this, once we've practiced meditation to the point where we can do this on a regular basis, we can get to this watching state where we're not our mind, we're not our memories, we're not our thoughts, we're not our feelings, we're our consciousness, and we're just aware. Okay? We're just watching the stream flow, not getting caught up in it. Once we're at that point, we can start asking questions. Who am I and all this? But you have to wait for the answer. First, it's just going to be a lot of random thoughts, lots of random noise. Okay? But you just keep listening for things. Keep questioning the thing, but don't get caught up in it. Just listen. Your brain will start saying things to you. I'm this, I'm that. Start answering the question. What you need to keep asking is, why? Why? If your brain shouts out, I'm a firefighter, You say, why? The brain says, well, because I'm a hero. Then you say, why? Your brain will say, because I want to help people. And you say, why? And your brain says, well, it's nice to help people. And you say, why? And your brain says, well, it's good to be useful. Why? Because everybody should be useful. Why? Well, because so many people do so many things for us, we owe them. Why? Well, if we don't do something to make it so that we deserve to exist, then if we don't do our bit, then you know, we're not paying what we're owed, what we owe. Why? You know, you keep asking that question. Now understand that this is going to be uncomfortable. That you peeling back the layers on your self-identity this way, and you sticking with that, is going to be uncomfortable. Eventually, when you dig deep enough down, you'll get to the point where there's no more answers. Now, that answer can come like a lion's roar. It can be triumphant. You know, I am this, thundering from within. Or it can be a cry, shrill, you know, like a leave me alone kind of deal, you know what I mean? Because it feels so vulnerable. Regardless, you know it when it feels raw. When there's no conception to it. It's an answer that you've never conceived of before. All right? And yet it sounds right. It should scare you with how accurate it is about you. That this one secret, this one key is the key to understanding all of the things you've been throughout your life. I am this. Okay. Strong. And weak. And true, most importantly. You'll know it when you hear it. Because what you're doing is you're peeling back the layers of the ego and the id until you've gone back to superego. You're backwards tunneling back into your own consciousness, into your divine self, your true self, until the true answer comes. It's not always going to be what you want it to be, right? And it'll start off as a notion, as a feeling first, right? And then it will turn into words. First, it'll be a feeling, right? A primal urge. Concepts like words describing how you feel peeled back away several Ys ago, you know, leaving you with just impressions. But eventually you get the impression, right? The core to who you are. Now, the purpose of discovering a magic name, its utility, is to try to self-actualize. What you're trying to do, right, is bring your insides to your outsides, to know who you are. Now, it's possible to get this core, this raw core, and not like it, right? It might be a negative thing that comes out, you know? That core feeling might be, I'll fuck anybody up who fucks with me, right? You know, what your core self ends up saying to you, you know, it's not always a positive feeling. Sometimes it's a desperate, dark thing. But what you have to understand is that doesn't mean you're an evil person just because your core is dark. What it means is that your conception of that idea, of your core idea, is dark. So you think that your core self is evil, and therefore it seems evil to you, right? Whereas if you think that the thing that you are inside is a positive thing, it's going to seem very positive to you. The main core of it is that it's unmitigatable. It's immutable. You just are that thing. That's why it's scary. That's why it's uplifting. Because you are that thing. You can't dig any deeper than that. You're at the rock bottom of who you are as a person. Okay. It's very hard to meditate long enough for that. When I found my magical name, I had to meditate for 2 hours. And even then, I wasn't done. The 2 hours just got me to the core. It didn't allow me to process that core. The core is like ore, right? All right. It's a feeling. It's who you really are. It's your core self, right? But that feeling, that divine self, does not necessarily translate one-to-one to a magical name, right? It doesn't. What you have to understand is that the name is a mnemonic device. It allows you to easily remember that feeling, the core, the feeling of your true self. That is what you're channeling when you do magic. Okay, your magic name is like a spell that recalls that feeling to you. The magic name is not the core itself. The core is the core. The core is the center of your soul. The magic name is something that gets your consciousness into the core of yourself, channeling that quicker. Okay, so it's a remembering device. It's like writing down in your diary. All right, so you write down what that feeling feels like. What is your core? Okay, you write down. Now, at first, the words aren't going to come to you very easily. It's going to be very hard to write down indescribable concepts. Your literary ability is not failing you. You're describing the human soul with a language as clumsy as English. Forgive yourself for some initial awkwardness, my friend. It's okay. But eventually you'll land on the core ideas that feel right. You'll know when you can still feel the core while you're writing, that you've got it. You know what I mean? That this isn't deviating from the path, that what you're writing doesn't feel like a lie. Okay? It's not distancing you from your core. So you're writing it and it feels like you are expressing that gut sound. Okay? That guttural feeling of yourself. Okay, so once you've gotten it all written down, sometimes this will be a paragraph or two, you know. Sometimes you'll ramble on for a while until eventually you hit on it, right? Once you've gotten there, okay, then you turn your core into a saying. Something that makes you feel that feeling. Now, this saying can be a little rhyme or a little ditty or a limerick or whatever, but the idea is that it's only a few words long. You don't want it to be too long, right? Little saying, something you can say to yourself, right? You know, and it should be preferably, you know, a positive declaration. I do this, right? You want to put yourself into it. So, invincible I stand, or whatever, you know, whatever your core is. But you want to put yourself into it, and it wants to be a positive statement. Yes, even if you had a negative concept, okay? If the feeling was negative, you want to take some time and process the feeling. You want to sit with it for a little while longer. Genuinely your true self, right? True selves are not inherently good or inherently bad. Okay. But what you're trying to do is positively integrate that true self. So in order for that to be the case, in order for you to use this as a core of power, it has to make you feel powerful, right? It can't be poison, right? Now, it's possible that a lifetime of bullshit has poisoned your perspective on your core, that you'll hear your initial self and that you won't think positively of it. Process through that. Process through that drama. You know, allow yourself to feel that peace that you're feeling on the outside with the meditation inside. Keep looking at it till it's not ugly anymore. Till it feels right. Till it feels like home. Then once you've figured out how to phrase it as a powerful phrase that you can stand by, okay, that's what you write down. No more than a sentence. 5 to 7 words. So, now that you have that, this is your magical phrase. This is your magical name. It allows you instantaneously to go back to that feeling. You say it, and you feel like you. Okay? And not just you Like, oh, I have a cool, I feel like such me today. I'm wearing my favorite outfit. No, similar to that, but no, you're feeling your spiritual core, the essence of your consciousness. It's a little bit of a different feel. It's a wee bit different than being, you know, in a good vibe. I mean, it is that. It does feel good, right? Once you've processed through everything, but you know, it does make you feel like you're in the zone, right? But it's different than what you've experienced previously. So now that you've embraced your core self and you've turned that core self into a phrase, you're never going to tell anybody that phrase ever. That is your magical name. You should never tell anybody your magical name, because if somebody knows your core self, they can decode you. They can use that core self against you, okay? Because they know what your currency is. What is your main motivator? What do you have to do? What is the irresistible concept that you cannot run away from? Okay? If they know what your impulse is, what your consciousness is, then it's very easy to control you. So you don't want to tell anybody. This is where the you know, power, you know, the perception of purpose, right? Perception on purpose. You don't want to let anybody else perceive your magical name. Your magical name is yours. You're allowed to be selfish in this regard, and you ought to be. Okay? Keep it to yourself. So you have these 5 words or 7 words or whatever. That's a summary of the core experience that you've discovered within yourself that allows you to instantaneously channel that core feeling. What do you do with it now? It's not a name yet, right? You encode it. You could take the first letter from every word in the sentence, or you can put the words in Latin and then take some of those letters, or you can find a name of some entity that means what you got, or whatever, or you can take a name that you think sounds cool, that has a similar meaning or a sound, or a word that summarizes the sentence, and then you alter it slightly to be a name. There's 1,000 different ways to encode that magical phrase into your magical name. Now, your magical name, you can tell people, because the magical name is not your magical phrase. It might give a hint to it, but it doesn't necessarily tell the person what your core is, right? It's supposed to remind you of your core. So your magical name is an encoded version of your magical phrase. Your magical phrase is a mnemonic device to remind you of your spiritual center. So this whole ritual's purpose, okay, is to get you in touch with your innermost soul. This has been the end of season 1 of Soul Arrow. I might go back and do the third part of part 5 eventually, but I might not. I might just link different videos to good first-time hypnosis things and be done with it. If I'm going to do the linking thing, I'll add that to 5 part 2 and alter the description. But this 6th episode of Soul Arrow, this episode that has to deal with finding your innermost self, I feel like this is a good point to end this first season. I'm ever so thankful that you came with me on this magical journey. This has been the Blue Wizard, Master Anatar, hoping that these vibrations find you well.